Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a truly explosive chapter of medieval Indian history. We're talking about the Khilji dynasty. And honestly, they were exactly like a meteor streaking across the sky of the Delhi Sultanate. I mean, think about a fiery, incredibly violent arrival, a blindingly bright peak of absolute centralized power, and then, almost as quickly as it appeared, a rapid, explosive disintegration. Let's get right into it. Okay, so let's start with a really staggering number. 30. That is the mere 3 decades this entire dynasty actually held power over the Delhi Sultanate, right from 1290 to 1320 CE. Now, when you look at the grand timeline of empires, 30 years is literally just a blip. You could practically live through the entire rise and fall of this dynasty in a single generation. And that brings us to the core mystery we're unpacking in our explainer today. It's absolutely fascinating to ask, how on earth could such a brief reign permanently reshape the political geography of India? How did they manage to survive massive existential Mongol invasions and at the exact same time create one of the pre-modern world's most ambitious state surveillance economies? Well, to answer that, we've got to look at exactly how they started. Section 1, the Bloody Khilji Revolution. So back in 1290, the Khiljis, a clan seen as semi-Afghan outsiders by the local aristocracy, violently seized power, and in doing so, they extinguished the old Mamluk line forever. But right after the takeover, a really stark contrast in leadership emerged. You had the dynasty's founder, Jalaluddin. He was a guy who heavily favored leniency, pardons, and conciliation. But then you have his nephew, Alauddin Khilji, who saw things very, very differently. Alauddin operated purely on cold-blooded pragmatism. To him, conciliation was really just a softer word for weakness. Section 2. Alauddin's ruthless rise. And to secure this pragmatic, ruthless worldview, Alauddin actually funded a shocking betrayal, going as far as to have his own uncle assassinated, just so he could seize the throne. Section 3. Iron-fisted economic reforms. Now, to fund a massive army capable of fighting off invading Mongols, Alauddin built a totally unprecedented system to artificially stabilize the entire economy. So here is the crucial point. His state officers and his highly active espionage departments strictly fixed prices across all essential commodities. We're talking grain, cloth, horses, slaves, the whole shebang. And this wasn't just a friendly suggestion. It was absolute law. He literally posted royal officials directly in the markets to enforce compliance. Hoarding or profiteering? No way. Those were punished with incredibly severe measures, ranging from property confiscation to actual physical mutilation. To actually fuel this crazy system, he engineered a brilliant supply chain. To make absolutely sure the grain markets never ran dry, Alauddin collected direct taxes in the form of actual, physical grain right from the fertile Doab region. That grain then flowed directly into massive state-built granaries in Delhi. This system was so rigorous that historical chronicles actually report Delhi's food prices literally never fluctuated, not even during severe droughts. But, of course, to build those granaries and fund the state, Alauddin had to really squeeze the rural economy. He instituted direct land measurement and demanded a staggering 50% of all agricultural produce. I mean, half of everything. This incredibly high rate was definitely designed to maximize state revenue, but it also had a really clever secondary strategic purpose. It completely stripped the wealth and power away from rural landed elites, basically making sure they simply couldn't afford to fund a rebellion against them. But hey, what good is all that money if your own generals are just stealing it, right? In medieval armies, nobles would often lie about how many troops they had just to pocket the extra pay. So to ensure his massive standing army wasn't being siphoned off through fraud, Alauddin introduced a super strict dual system of verification. First was dog, which meant branding horses with official marks. And second was chera, which were detailed physical descriptions or roles of every single individual soldier. This totally allowed him to pay a highly disciplined, fully verified force in modest, reliable cash. Section 4. Expanding the Empire. So, with this military machine perfected and his northern borders relatively secure, Alauddin turned his sights toward expanding his frontiers across India. This expansion involved some seriously violent campaigns against major Rajput fortresses. The most famous of these is definitely the 1303 Siege of Chittor. Now, later literary traditions, like the famous 16th century epic poem Padmavat, they added highly romanticized, legendary layers to Chittor's fall, including the tales of Queen Padmini. But if we strip away the later poetry, the historical conquest itself was a brutal, heavily verified reality that really cemented Delhi's dominance over the region. And then the empire pushed even further south. Alauddin used his most trusted general, Malik Kafur, who was actually a former slave of Gujarati origin who rose up through sheer military genius. Kafur pushed incredibly deep into the Deccan and the far south. But here is the really clever part. Instead of attempting costly, direct territorial annexation, Kafur utilized a highly profitable strategy of just extracting massive tribute. We're talking gold, jewels, elephants, and forcing submission, effectively turning these distant kingdoms into subordinate allies. Section 5. The dynasty's rapid collapse. So, Alauddin had seemingly built this invincible state, right? But with his death in 1316, the incredibly tight administrative web he had spun simply dissolved, almost overnight. The resulting disintegration was just absolute chaos. Malik Kafur tries to rule as regent, but he gets assassinated within weeks. Then Alauddin's son, Mubarak Shah, takes over with a highly erratic, self-indulgent rule. He is then assassinated by his own court favorite, Khusro Khan, in a really violent usurpation. Finally, by September 1320, a seasoned frontier governor named Ghazi Malik marches on Delhi, kills the usurper, and replaces the Khiljis forever. It took a mere 4 years for the entire empire to implode. So why did it all vanish so rapidly? Well, it basically fell apart because Alauddin's intricate administrative apparatus relied entirely on his own personal capacities. There were absolutely no institutional succession laws to guide a peaceful transition. On top of that, his harsh economic reforms had completely alienated the established nobility, so honestly, no one was really loyal to his heirs. Without Alauddin's iron grip holding it all together, moral laxity, warring court factions, and the unchecked ambitions of rapidly promoted favorites simply tore the state apart from the inside out. I want to leave you with a provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer. The Khilji dynasty achieved military and economic feats that were totally unmatched in their time, completely transforming the Indian subcontinent. But it really begs the question, does building a state around the absolute centralized power of one single individual guarantee its destruction the very moment that individual is gone? It's a powerful lesson from 1320 that definitely still resonates today. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and keep questioning the history around you.